No? Okay, right. Thanks, Ross. I really want to just cover a couple of relatively simple ideas, I suppose. And I mean, the temptation when we're talking about what's going to drive our profit is to stand up here and say you should have 41.2% weathers and you should run this many things this way, and sort of have a recipe about it. But I think there's many ways to skin a cat, and so I'm not going to be prescriptive about those sort of issues, but I do want to talk more broadly about what we've got to achieve in our merino flocks, so we've got a competitive enterprise and we've got a competitive sector. And then I think the next question is to think about how we go about achieving those things. Before I start, I'll put up one number. I'm not going to tell you what the question is that gives you that number. I'll tell you a bit later. But I want to sear it in your mind. If nothing else you take away from what I say this afternoon, 1801. Okay? You might even get the free dog if you actually guess the question. I bet I'll be in trouble if I give that away. But I'll come back to that. 1801, the critical number that I think as an industry we really need to be thinking about. So, two questions I want to talk about. Where am I at now with my flock? And where am I headed? Okay? Quite simple questions, and I think it's good to think about your sheep business in this context. So I'll take the first one first. Where am I at now? And I think the simplest way to look at your flock is to say, my flock, if it's any decent sort of flock under any decent sort of management system, has got to be generating $20 per DSC per year of profit. Not gross margin, not income, profit. Left over, put in the bank. You run 10,000 DSC, 200,000 bucks profit at the end of the year. That's what you've got to be targeting. It's being achieved, and this is average over a number of years, and obviously it will vary from year to year. But if you're not generating 20 bucks per DSC per year, your business is not performing, and I think you question whether it's sustainable in the long term. Pretty simple. You know the answer for your own flocks. Okay, so if you know the answer, where do you sit in relation to the 20 bucks? If you're doing the 20 bucks, you can relax for the next few minutes, because I'm going to talk about what the gap you've got to bridge to get to 20 bucks. If you're already there, or you're doing 28, that's great. If you're doing 35, I don't believe you. But if you're already up over 20, then that's fine, because you've got things 90% right, and you've got a different set of challenges to if you're down at 10 or at 0. Why 20? A couple of reasons. So if you look at your business and say, what have I got invested in my sheep business? So I have, on average, say 300 bucks a DSC in land. That will vary, obviously. I've got some bit tied up in plant and machinery, and if it's any more than 15 bucks, then you've got a problem. And because you just don't need it. You might need it for the cropping, but not for your livestock system. You've got about $50 a DSC tied up in livestock capital. That's the animals themselves. And you've got about 20 bucks on average through the year tied up in working capital. So if you look at what you've got invested in your business, you've got 385 bucks a DSC. If you're generating $20 profit, you've got 5.2% return on capital from your sheep enterprise. Okay, you add to that the capital growth, which over the last 20, 30 years, we've done 6 to 8% nominal. So you've actually got a pretty tidy business that's doing 11 to 13% return on capital. But if you're not generating your 20 bucks, if you're doing 10 bucks and you drop this down to 2, 2.5, your business is not performing, you're not competitive. And there's no reason why it can't be up there at the $20 or more. So that's where you've got to be, because if you don't do that, then all these numbers down here start to fall apart. And if you're not generating those sort of returns, it's really hard to be investing in your business in the future and generating the income you need to be for whatever you want to spend it on. And so just to get a reality check, these are data from Sackett, from Sandy and John. Average of the last 5 years of the top 20% of merino flocks in terms of their profit. $22. So I haven't actually put it that high to say 20 bucks. They're doing 22. Now I know that's sort of average of 5 years, and some flocks come and go from those sort of things. And you've got years in there where you just cream it. $43 profit for DSC. A bit tougher last year at 9. But the reality is, over a 5-year period, good flocks, well-managed flocks, are doing $22 a DSC. So there's farmers out there, plenty of farmers out there who are doing it. If we just look at it, of course, you've got the option of adding dual purpose into your system if you've got a merino flock, and and the effect of that each year is that it actually is more profitable than just the straight self-merino replacing flock. So adding some dual purpose in there will only help you get your merino profitability up, or your flock profitability up a bit higher. Because over time, it's average, over the same 5 years, average 28 bucks. Yep, you're busting for question. Oh, just terminal over merino. Not, well, obviously it varies, but that's all dual purpose, profitability of dual purpose enterprises. But if you're typical of that, then you'd say I should have as much dual purpose in the system as possible to boost my profitability for $5 a DSC. So as much as possible, I think, is your answer, given your country and, you know, assuming you've got something you can do something with your land. So it's being achieved. It varies from year to year, so it's important when you actually sit down and think about this that you actually look at it over a number of years, because if you do it last year, you'll go home and slash your wrist and say, sack, bloody off, cook it around, no way I can achieve that, nowhere near it. So look at it over time, because you do get substantial variation from year to year. So if my profit's less than 20 bucks a DSC, what am I going to do? How do I address it? What's my strategy to fix this? Well, I think this is really easy at the end of the day. Most of it is proven. Most of it is out there. If you go and get good advice, if you're not sure about things, it's easy to set your system up to achieve this. It is not rocket science. It's not high risk. It is just getting some fundamental things right. And I think for most farmers, it's actually saying, what do I not do, rather than what do I do? Because most people complicate things too much. It's at the end of the day, a few key things, you get those right, focus on those, and the rest will fall into place. So it's about a combination, obviously, of income generation and cost control. You've got to work on both sides of the equation. And so the key things that you've got to think about, I think, and these are the easy bits. Fix your genetics. There is no excuse for poor genetics in the Australian sheep flock anymore. There are no excuses. It is so transparent about what performs in the top 20% and what doesn't. If you are not performing in your flock and you don't know where your flock stands, then get an answer very quickly and do something about it. I mean, in reality, you know, probably 50%, 70% of the rams that are born in studs in Australia should have rings put on them at birth, and there should be no demand for them, even if they don't have rings put on them. Because it is so transparent about what's performing and what's not. Never have we been in a position with so much information to make a good decision about genetics. So there is no excuse for genetically average sheep on your place. It is worth so much money, and it doesn't cost you anything extra to generate it. It is the simplest thing you can do. We tend to make it complicated, and you know, we now face the challenge about where does genomics fit in this? As commercial producers, just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's not a driver of your profitability. It's really important for your ram breeder to be on top of that, but as commercial producers, don't worry. You want to make sure that your stud breeder or your ram breeder is doing the right thing, but as a commercial producer, interesting, great to know, good technology, offers a lot of promise. You just worry about that, and I'll come and get the rams, get the benefit from what you've done for me. So get the genetics sorted. It's pretty simple. Fix your pastures and fix your stocking rate. You know, again, that's worth about $2 to $4 a DSC because you're spreading your overhead costs over more DSCs. Fix your management program and your flock structure. You know, I mean, there are so many simple things about, you know, when you lamb and when you sell and those sorts of things. Put that package together in the optimum mix, and that's worth $4 to $8 a DSC. So it's pretty easy to accumulate the 20 if you're not already accumulating the 20. They're the things you've got to focus on. And as I say, there's nothing new there, absolutely nothing new. But it's a case of putting them together in a disciplined way. Making sure you get the priorities right. If you're distracted with a whole heap of gizmos like auto drafts or ultrasound or all that sort of stuff, go back, start again, think about your business. What am I doing? Will that make me more money? Chances are no, it's just adding complexity. So get the simple things right, understand what they are. When the new bits of technology come along, put the auto draft over the technology, and most of it will go in the colour. So keep it relatively simple. The next challenge is, if my average profit is $20 per DSC or more, where's my business going? What's the key thing for me to do in the future? This is much harder, but it's still quite achievable. We need to continue to lift productivity or profitability over time. And I think this is where, as an industry, we need to do some serious navel gazing. And then we'll stop navel gazing and do something about it. If we look at productivity gains, and when I talk about productivity gains, what I'm talking about is output relative to input. So it's not production, it's not how much wool you produce per hectare or per head. It's about how much your business put out in relation to what you put into your business. And so it's how much it's a combination of your cost structure, the quality of your sheep, you know, your labour, all those sort of things that go together. So it's productivity, not production, and it's a very different measure. You can change productivity by putting more out on the same cost base. You can change productivity by putting the same amount out but from a lower cost base. In reality, what we want to do is do both of them. We look at the sheep industry for the last 34 years, minus 0.1% per annum productivity gain. Sorry, I shouldn't call it productivity gain, productivity loss. We have been going backwards as a sector. If we look at cropping, which we do across the fence, southern cropping, 1.6% per annum productivity gain. And beef is somewhere in between, southern beef is somewhere in between. While we have that situation going on, we are diverting resources to the more efficient, more profitable system, and that has tended to be cropping. And we look at that now, of where cropping fits in a lot of farms compared to where the sheep sit. Some extremes, 100% cropping, no sheep at all. That would have been unheard of 20 or 30 years ago. But economically, people are being driven that way because the productivity gains out of the sheep sector have been flatlining, whereas cropping has been doing this. So relative performance of the cropping has just been widening the gap the whole time. We haven't changed to beef, but that aside. So the bright spot is in the last 10 years or so, we've actually achieved slightly better productivity gains. And we have sort of come out of our torpor of the 70s and 80s and 90s, and we've actually done something about it. And interestingly, it's come about because we've increased prime lamb production. Not that we've done anything in our merino sector, but we've actually changed more to meat production, which has improved our productivity. So unless we address this issue as an industry, and unless we address it on an individual farm basis, the prospects for our merino industry are not good. We need to focus on this and we need to address it. We need to do something about it. So this is where our 1801 comes in. So if we look at farms and say, sorry, if we look at it and say average EMI for the last 3 years has been 1140 cents. That's been the average price. So, you know, you can vary either side of that depending on where your private owner sits. The value foregone of no productivity in the sheep industry is 660 cents in terms of price equivalent. So had we been focused on improving productivity over the last 30 years, your farm would be sitting there and you'd be generating the equivalent of $1800 cents, gee dollars, 1800 cents a clean kilo for your wool. That would be the equivalent profitability that you would be generating today had we simply focused on improving productivity. Does that make sense? The farm business profit that you would make would be equivalent to you being paid 1800 cents. We would not see crop when we drive out home tonight. We would see wall-to-wall sheep because the profitability would be so good that it would be outstripping cropping. That's the opportunity we've foregone. And we can't continue to let that happen. So we've got to make sure this happens at the individual farm business, which is your responsibility, and we've got to make sure it happens at the industry level as well. If we don't, resources will continue to be diverted away and we'll just disappear and sheep will be run, merino sheep will be run where you can't possibly do anything else. So where do we get our productivity gains from? We can adopt existing technology. So we've already talked about those sort of things. There's plenty of existing technology. A lot of it is well adopted by some, but still we debate the whole issue about genetics and all that sort of stuff. Still we can't even agree on what matters in the industry and what doesn't in terms of genetics. And then we have new technology like genomics, which offers us, you know, we're not there yet, but it offers us a lot of exciting prospects further down the track. So from existing technology, you've got to make sure you use it, and then you've got to watch the new stuff that's coming along. They're ideas that are generated within the industry, but also we can get productivity from associated sectors. So the beef sector does something in pastures or something like that, and that spills across into us. So that's good, we get a free ride in effect to some extent. It happens if the dairy industry does something, but also we get it from private R&D. When we get a new drench comes on the market, or we put GPSs in our tractor, that productivity gain is coming from private investment in R&D. The issue we face is this fundamental problem about our R&D spend. And so if we look at where our money is spent now within AWI, on-farm R&D, so there's for some reason the percentage is dropped in there instead, but that's on-farm R&D. Post-farm R&D, and this is marketing. This is an extremely high-risk strategy for the industry. I think it is a rank disaster because what we continue to do is spend money on an area where we have, according to all the evidence, the lowest probability of a good return on the capital invested and the highest risk. Unless we as an industry can invest money sensibly in this area where the benefits come within the farm gate, then we face a real challenge about where our productivity gains are going to come from for the next 10 to 20 years. We don't even debate this in the industry. We only debate what our levy should be. But while we continue to do this, while we spend money here, which may or may not pay off, but there's certainly a lack of transparency of whether it's paying off or not. But while we continue to do this, we are taking much more risk. The further our R&D money is spent, or further our money is spent from the farm gate, the more likely it is to be diluted by the time the return comes back. And obviously it's your money that's being spent. So as an industry, we need to focus on this. We need to get this R&D back happening on farm to a large proportion. I'm not saying we rule it out, but this is just abrogating the future of the merino industry or the wool industry, and we are consigning ourselves to poor profitability over the medium to long term. We need to fix it. We need to fix the people who make the decisions about it, and as an industry we are responsible for that. So in summary, at the end of the day, the future is really about the management system, so it's about you. It's not a recipe. You've got to sit down and work out what the best thing is going to work in your farm business. You've got to be achieving your $20 per DSE or more. If you're not really having a go and you're not up there where you need to be. And across both our individual businesses and across our sector, we really need to refocus on this productivity gain issue.